Welcome to Blitz Take episode number 1. I am here with Steelers writer from Pittsburgh Sports Now, Nick Farabaugh, and we are going to dive deep into what he thinks about the Steelers this upcoming training camp. We're also going to talk about the schedule for this season and much more. So welcome and happy to have you.
I'm doing really well. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to talk to Steelers football, obviously. Lots to talk about this season. It's going to be really, really eventful, I think, and one of the more eventful ones we've had in a while in terms of just movement. So much new things to talk about. It's kind of rare.
My first question is, what are your thoughts on the quarterback situation?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one to answer because we're so far out from where we are. So it's tough to kind of look at, say, Trubisky or Pickett or whoever would start. It is a three-man race. Don't count out Mason Rudolph. Again, we've heard all the rumors about the depth chart, right? You know, it's Trubisky, Rudolph, Pickett right now. Pickett working as that QB3. I'll say this. I don't know if there's a true difference maker in this room as we stand here today. I do think that they can get serviceable play. You know, his tape in Chicago at times has good ups. He has good accuracy, especially outside the numbers. His mobility is going to allow him to do a few different things in this offense. It's going to allow Matt Canada to do what he wants. I think Kenny Pickett has special out-of-structure ability with how he throws off balance. I think he's very accurate to the middle of the field. I think he'll be able to work off play. I actually think both of these guys will actually be able to work off play action really well. Rudolph's a little different, a little less mobile, more of an outside-the-numbers guy, similar to Ben in a lot of ways in that regard. I think Mitch and Kenny are kind of in a different vein. I don't know if there's a true difference maker. I don't know if there's a franchise quarterback in this bunch, or at least, you know, if Kenny is going to be that franchise quarterback, he might not be at his top level yet. So he's going to be a rookie quarterback. So you're going to have his growths and pains if he's the one playing a lot. I think, though, that you can build a decent offense around this team with the quarterback as long as the offensive line plays well, which is also a question mark. So we'll see if that happens. They're able to run the ball with Najee well, and Najee's the real workhorse of the offense, which is probably the design. And then you get help from guys like Freiermuth, Claypool, Deontay, Pickens, all these other guys. So basically, you're just going to have to make sure you give that ideal environment to whether it's Mitch, Mason, Kenny, whoever it could be, to elevate their play and get you to where you want to go. And really, it's going to come down to whichever quarterback doesn't hurt you the most, whichever quarterback can take care of the ball, whichever quarterback can make the accurate throws, whichever quarterback makes the routine plays look routine, I think ends up the starter.
So what are your thoughts on the revamped offensive line?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one because I think there's a lot of improvements. I think, first of all, just adding James Daniels is a byproduct of a great move in the offseason. I think he's versatile in all the interior spots. I think he's the best offensive lineman on this team right away, and they got him for great value. This guy's going to be a leader, and he's only 24, so you have him for a long time now. So I think he's going to be fantastic wherever he plays. I think, you know, that you have a nice battle there at left guard between Kevin Dotson and Kendrick Green. I think people are giving up on Kendrick Green a little too early. I think Dan Moore in year 2, you got to have a little bit of trepidation there. He had good games in his rookie season, but I didn't see anything that would say necessarily he's a great starting left tackle in this league, but we'll see what the year 2 leap says for him. I think he could profile maybe more later in his career as a good guard, so we'll see how that ends up. Chuks Okorafor back. You know what you're going to get with him. He's an average starting right tackle in the NFL, so you know what you get there. Mason Cole, don't love him as a starting center. For me, my ideal lineup would probably be, as long as Kendrick Green maybe takes those strides forward with his athleticism and he improves his hand usage, maybe you can put Green at left guard, switch Dotson to right guard, start Daniels at center. Doesn't appear that's what they're going to do right now. It's going to probably be Daniels right guard, Cole center, then Dotson or Green at left guard. So I think there are still a few questions here. I think the tackle play is just average at best. I think that the center play is still a question. I think they're going to have a really good guard duo. I think whoever comes out of that guard battle at left guard is going to be better for it. And I think James Daniels is really good. That right side of the line could be really good with the core four being a pretty steady pass protector for the most part as well. So I think that this is going to be a better offensive line than last year. I'm not certain. I don't want to call it good, but I think it could reach average, which is better than what they had last year, and it could help out this team a lot.
What are your thoughts on the wide receivers?
Yeah, and that's another question where we're trying to figure that out, right? I think you have questions even about the guys coming back. Deontay Johnson is a great receiver. I think people underrate just how good he is. I think he's a top 15 receiver in the league right now. You don't find guys that can run routes, beat press like that, and work after the catch like he can, but he's great. So he's the guy that could even take another leap. I mean, he's that type of guy to me. I think that Deontay Johnson, if he clears up some of the inconsistencies, if he can get out of his own head a little bit every now and then, I think he could be a fantastic receiver and be worthy of a big contract that he's been asking for. Chase Claypool, that's a question mark too. We don't know. He didn't have the best year last year, kind of didn't expect his fall off last year. Now he's going to work more in the slot, which could work to his size and his speed and his strength. I think that'll actually work for him, working against smaller guys like safeties and slot corners. I think that a lot of teams are going to have trouble matching him on the inside, even though he'll work some outside still. He needs to become more consistent at the catch point with his catch technique and go stronger and play to his size, but I think he's got upside. I like the rookies, man. George Pickens is one of my favorite receivers coming out of the draft. Guy is an athletic freak, to say the least, 6'2", but has all the size and speed you want, has great body control, maybe the best hands in this class, moves big, moves like a smaller guy, moves like a guy that's 5'10", 5'11" at 6'2", runs really good routes, can work anywhere you line him up. Really good player. I think this one is going to be a good pick for them. I think he'll be right away in there, ready to go. Calvin Austin is the wild card of them all. 5'7", all 5'7" of them down there, but 4.3, 2 speed, incredible explosiveness. He'll be, I think, an interesting player. Maybe work him on jet sweeps, screens, work him into the return game. You can do a lot of different things with him. He'll be really good in the slot. Then outside of that, you just got battles between some guys: Miles Boykin, Anthony Miller, Steven Sims, Gunnar Olszewski. You got a ton of bodies there that are veteran, experienced guys that can be solid depth. So I think this wide receiver room, I know they lost Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, and Ray McLeod. I like what they did, though, this offseason. I think this receiver room should end up being a pretty good one.
So what are your thoughts on Devin Bush and the defensive lineman?
Yeah, I think Devin Bush is a pretty fascinating case in terms of football players, because the rookie year was up and down, but really fun. You saw a lot of very high peaks, and you saw the athleticism pop out at you, where he would make a big play, unbelievable interceptions, unbelievable pass breakups, great run stops, all the whole 9 yards. You would see it all. And then his second year, it seemed like he was really getting into his own. He looked better. The thing had slowed down for him. He was playing the best ball of his career, and to date, I think that was the best ball of his career. And then he gets obviously hurt against Cleveland, tears his ACL, misses the rest of the year. Last year just didn't look comfortable. I don't think he ever trusted the knee. He self-admitted that. I don't think he was ready to come back in terms of the full mental fortitude it takes. And then the D-line struggles, which you kind of alluded to, really didn't help him, right? The D-line, losing Stephon Tuitt for the whole year, losing Tyson Alualu in week 1. It really, really, really hurt this team. And for Devin Bush, that really was his criminal weakness. He doesn't really shed blocks well at the second level. He kind of wins with his elusiveness and speed. And so when the D-line isn't working and then he's not trusting himself, that's when you get into a lot of sticky situations. That's what happened. It was just a perfect storm of all the bad things for Devin Bush. And so, this year, I think you have to reasonably put more expectations on him, because there's a few things. One, Alualu is back. The D-line should be better. You would feel like it. They brought back pretty much everyone. Everyone's a year older. Everyone's a year wiser. They're ready to go. DeMarvin Leal's in there as well. You should have some outside linebacker depth with the signings of Gennard Avery and Tuzar Skipper, and then you have Tuska there as well to fight out. But you obviously have TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith into year 3 now. Big year for him. But also, I just think he has a better duo partner. Joe Schobert's no longer here. You bring in Miles Jack, who should take off a lot of pressure off of Bush, especially in coverage. Miles Jack probably going to be the main coverage guy because that's his MO. That's what he's been known for. And so I think Bush can just play free and just go and attack. And I think that's where he's going to be his best. He should trust his knee a lot more now, 2 years out of ACL surgery. Usually that's what happens. You'll see, some freaks like Adrian Peterson. People will point to that comeback from his torn ACL and say, look at what he did, but he is the outlier, not the norm. So I think we're going to see this year, I think we're going to see a rejuvenated Devin Bush to a degree. As far as the D line, I think there are some concerns there. Stephon Tuitt retiring obviously is a blow. It's a question of who's going to start now. I think it's sub packages. It's going to be obviously Cam Hayward and Tyson Alualu. But in the base packages, who's it going to be at the opposite 5 tech? Is it going to be Chris Wormley? Is it going to be maybe Alualu full-time at 5 tech and put Montravius Adams at the nose? Is DeMarvin Leal ready to go? I don't think he is, but could he be? What about Isaiah Loudermilk? You have a lot of intriguing young talent at that spot, but not necessarily proven talent. Chris Wormley, probably the surest bet of those. A vet here, has been in Baltimore, was good in Pittsburgh last year, had a career year, 7.5 sacks. I would bet on Wormley to win that. I still think that there are some run defense concerns there because you're not getting Tuitt back, and you're putting a lot on Tyson Alualu, who's now 35 years old, coming off a broken leg, which is always dicey to me. We'll see if he regains his form. But I think they could be better. I think this could be one of the strongest units on the team if everything works out. It could also be just similar to last year. And then Devin Bush also has a lot more pressure placed on him as a result.
So what are your thoughts on coming into training camp, and what do you want to see in the newest prospects that got drafted?
Yeah, I think, what you want to see with this team is kind of how the young guys work together with the veterans. And you want to see this team come together as a cohesive unit. You want to see how they fit in with Matt Canada's offense, because the Steelers are essentially going full Matt Canada's offense this year. And Ben Roethlisberger couldn't really run everything. It didn't really mesh with him. Sometimes you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's kind of what happened there. And Ben Roethlisberger and Matt Canada had to compromise on what they wanted to do. And so that was reasonable. This year, though, it's a full go. Kenny Pickett was recruited by Matt Canada. Mitch Trubisky has ran a lot of different stuff that's similar to what Matt Canada has done, coming from Matt Nagy, who obviously learned from Andy Reid, and Reid learned from Canada. Yeah, all this stuff works together. So it makes sense in this regard. So I want to see how they mesh together. I want to see how the young guys, specifically like Pickens and Austin, learn the offense and what they're doing against the number ones. I want to see them against Ahkello Witherspoon, Levi Wallace, Cam Sutton, these guys. I want to see them there. You want to see how this D-line looks once they get the pads on, because we're finally going to see pads. And you want to see, okay, which of these guys is going to step up and take the reins? Is this going to be a physical team that's going to come out here and punch you in the mouth? Or is this going to be a team that's maybe a little softer up front, similar to what they were last year? And are they going to put the onus on just a few players, on their superstars? Or is this going to be more of a team-oriented game? So you just look for how they're going to work together as a team, the communication from the quarterback to receiver to line, so many new moving parts on defense, how Minkah Fitzpatrick works in the secondary, how Miles Jack is working as the leader, how Cam Hayward is mentoring guys like Leal and Loudermilk in year 2. You're watching all of this stuff, and you're just kind of watching that cohesion, because for a young team, having that cohesiveness with so many new pieces, that's how they kind of win early on, and that's how you fight and you claw. And if they have that cohesiveness, communication-wise, understanding each other, having good chemistry with each other, that's just going to make the basic stuff work better. And I think that's what they really should be building in training camp and what you're looking for.
What are your thoughts on the rest of the AFC North coming into the season?
I think it's a good division. I think you have to be scared of the other quarterbacks in the division. Now, obviously, the Browns are a huge question mark with Deshaun Watson's situation. We've got reports that it could be a year-long suspension, which obviously changes the outlook of how the AFC North would work out. Jacoby Brissett's very different from even Baker Mayfield. And I would bet money Baker Mayfield never plays another snap in Cleveland. So that's unlikely to happen. So we'll see what happens with Cleveland. For right now, they're probably on the back burner a little bit. If they have Deshaun Watson, obviously different things change. But just looking past that, the Ravens have a revamped defense, an entirely revamped secondary, bring in Marcus Williams, draft a few guys, really just get it all back together. Marcus Peters is back. Marlon Humphrey's back. They're all back Kyle Hamilton is your number one overall pick at the 14th overall. Like, you're feeling good about that. Your secondary is your main issue last year. You fixed it a lot. You got Lamar Jackson. Now, you don't have any receivers, which is a worrying sign. We'll see how that ends up. But the offensive line should be good this year. They should be a good team this year. Everything you look at with the Baltimore Ravens screams to me that this is going to be a good football team. So I would be wary of the Ravens. I think people are sleeping on Lamar Jackson. Obviously, the Bengals just went to the Super Bowl and they didn't really lose anybody. They brought in La'el Collins, who will help on that offensive line. They kept all their core together. So Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Real only diversion from that is C.J. Uzomah, who's now with the Jets. The defense is pretty solid too. So this is going to be a good team. So the Steelers are going to have an uphill fight. They're more of a young upstart team that's going to have to fight and claw their way to this division if they want to win the whole thing versus more established guys like Burrow and Jackson. So I think it's a tough division to read right now. I think the Steelers have a shot here if their defense kind of pans out the way it could pan out, because this could be the great equalizer. And as long as their quarterback takes care of the ball, I think we could see something really manifest here. But obviously those two, the Ravens and the Bengals, have to be the favorites here.
What are your thoughts on the punter situation for the Steelers?
I think Presley Harvin is interesting because he is such a talented player. In terms of what you see in practice and what you see on his college tape, it is some of the most impressive punting you're going to see. It really is good stuff. Now, the issue was, I thought last year was, he had a lot of personal tragedy that surrounded him with his grandma and his father falling ill. And then, his father passing away near the end of the season. Comes out the last game of the year and plays his best game of the year. So he's building off a really good game in the playoff game. If there was one positive from that game for the Steelers, Presley Harvin III was absolutely booming the heck out of those balls that entire game. And he looks good. He looks good this year. Consistently has punted the ball at a high level throughout minicamp, OTAs, all of that stuff. So he looks good thus far from what I've seen. I think that, they're going to go in with him. Obviously, they have a punter battle here as well to a degree, but I think that Presley Harvin is going to fill in nicely. He just needs to find more consistency. He needs to, be there with his directional punting, stuff like that. But the talent's obviously there, and I think we're starting to see it manifest now with a little bit more of a stable environment.
So are you going to be able to be at training camp, or are you going to have the chance to just do Zoom press conferences?
Yeah, no, I'll be down there doing all of that stuff. I'll be down in Latrobe watching these games, watching their scrimmages, their team events, all this stuff that they have, talking to players. I'll be doing the whole 9 yards. So I'll be down there covering training camp, we'll see everything up close and personal.
I know that we kind of touched on Deshaun Watson's situation. Do you think that he's going to get any playing time this season, or he's going to be a scratch?
Yeah, I tend to think that it's likely he's a scratch, just with the whole situation around that. I think you kind of got to put that as your expectation.
Mm-hmm. And my second to last question is, what is your record prediction for the season?
Yeah, super early record prediction. I mean, Steelers don't have an overly tough schedule, in my opinion. The quarterback factor is going to be something to watch, but then you also think about it, and they made the playoffs last year with Big Ben, who was undeniably not very good. He was just not good. Now, some of the games that they have, they're probably going to upset a few teams. They did last year. Beating the Bills, for example, was a stunner. They swept the Ravens. I think that's something to look at. They have a tough stretch, but I look at the schedule and see a lot of winnable games. And this is a team, to me, that has a high variance of outcome. Could see anywhere from maybe 10-7 to 6-11. But Mike Tomlin is a guy I don't really like to bet against. He's a proven winner. And I think that they've developed enough of a team here with a good talent. I think this defense is going to be decent. And I think that this squad ends up going 9-8. I think that's pretty comfortable to expect them to maybe repeat what they did last year. And I think, that could sneak them into the playoffs. We'll see where they stand. But I have a hard time betting against Mike Tomlin not winning a lot of games.
And my last question is, what are your thoughts on having the chance to watch this college football season, and which players are you going to be looking at during the season, and like to help get your mind on the 2023 draft?
Yeah, there's always a ton of players that I'd like to watch and that I've earmarked. Obviously, I'm close to the Pitt program, so there's a lot of guys there like Kalijah Cansey and Servasige Dennis and Habakkuk Baldonado that I'll be watching. There are a ton of guys elsewhere though that I do want to watch that I've started to familiarize myself with. A guy like Zay Flowers from Boston College is a really intriguing player. Decided to go back, thought he might come out, but I really like his game. Dontavian Wicks from Virginia is another guy I really like in this class. The running back class should be really fun. So obviously I'll be watching some guys like Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sean Tucker, Tank Bigsby. There's a ton of guys. In terms of QBs, really excited to watch what Tyler Van Dyke can maybe do down in Miami. Really impressed with some of what he can do. Cameron Ward at Washington State coming up now. Was an incarnate word last year. Really fun player. Jaron Hall, all tools there at BYU. Another fun guy that I'm looking forward to seeing. I like Broderick Jones from Georgia in terms of the big hog mollies. I love watching some of these guys play in terms of in that trench role, man. I love the trenches, so I do watch this guy. Emil Ekiyor is another guy I really want to watch. So you look at some of these guys and you can't help but really be excited for them. And, there's a good DB class, it looks like, coming up as well. Guys like Brandon Joseph, who's now getting a bigger role, Jordan Battle, Rashad Torrance. You get all these different players that kind of go together, and it's hard not to want to watch all of them. Joey Porter Jr., Penn State. I mean, there are so many players that I could just rattle off that I'm really excited to watch, but those are just a few.
It's going to be a very interesting time next month once training camp gets underway. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me on. This was a great talk. Make sure to check out the podcast, folks. It's going to be a great thing here that Alex has going. So make sure to check it out, future episodes and everything. This is great.
Thank you.